Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of the Auburn Undercover podcast. A little bit of a recruiting A-Day podcast today. Christian Clemente here, joined by Phillip Dukes and Jason Caldwell. It is a loaded podcast. We have a ton of guys to talk about because it's set to be just an absolutely loaded A-Day. It's Big Cat-esque. Might even be bigger than Big Cat, and definitely in some years, definitely in recent years. But this has become the new norm of Auburn recruiting a little bit. We've seen it over the spring. We've seen five-star visitors just about every day, and there's going to be a big collection of them on campus on Saturday. Hopefully the rain holds out. We're recording this late Wednesday night, so we'll see how the forecast changes. Hopefully it gets a little better, but either way, there's going to be a big collection of recruits there, and that's what we're here to talk about. Guys, first off, I think let's start with Perry Thompson. There's a ton of guys expected to be on campus, going to be a loaded list, Jason. But in terms of storylines, it's tough to find one with a bigger storyline coming into A-Day than Perry Thompson. The five-star Alabama commit is the number 14 player in the class. He's the number 5 wide receiver and number 2 player in the state of Alabama. And he's been to Auburn a lot recently. Not really recruited by the previous staff. Pay attention to these dates here. He gets offered on January 11th. Visits a couple days later, January 14th. He's back for a spring practice on March 15th, and he quietly made his way back to campus on March 27th as well. And now he's expected back for A-Day. So pretty intriguing visitor there.
Yeah, and that the March 27th visit was one that I think it took everybody surprise, even most of the coaching staff. I think maybe Marcus Davis knew about it and maybe a couple other guys, but he basically, when he's about 15 minutes from campus, says, "Hey, I'm almost there. I'm coming to practice." And I think it surprised some folks, but that's a huge deal.
A pleasant surprise.
That he keeps coming back. And Auburn has made him a huge priority. A couple of guys, people that we're going to talk about are all top rated guys, and they made those guys a priority. But I think you look at it and big physical wide receivers. Hugh Freeze has talked about catch radius. You look at Perry Thompson, and he's 6'3", 6'4". It's a big physical wide receiver, exactly what they're looking for. And they've made him feel welcome. He keeps coming back. It's going to be a battle. But once again, Auburn has put itself in a position to make a run at a guy that's committed to Alabama. But again, just like Ryan Williams and some other guys, they keep coming back to Auburn and keep building a relationship, and that's where it starts.
Yeah, you mentioned Ryan Williams, another 5-star Alabama commit, the Auburn legacy in the 2025 class. He's also expected back. We've talked about him a lot. And if you guys go over to our site, auburnundercover.com, we have a running visitor list. By the time you guys are listening to this, actually, we'll have even more, probably a confidential and a Duke scoop and all that kind of stuff. So definitely make sure to check us out over there. But Ryan Williams will be there. Duke's a guy that we reported, I guess it was Tuesday, that would be there on campus on Saturday. He's going to be the highest ranked player on campus, it seems like. I don't know if there's going to be anybody there higher than him. Number 4 overall player in the class, KJ Boldin, the safety out of Buford. He'll be returning.
Yeah, absolutely. KJ will be there with his family. His mom will definitely be in tow. He's on a bit of a tour of sorts right now. So the fact that he's getting back to Auburn for A-Day is huge for Auburn. Going into the season, I didn't have a whole lot of expectations or optimism as far as Auburn recruiting him. They got in the game late, a coaching change. Teams have been recruiting him as if he was their number 1 on their board for years. Now Auburn's gotten involved. Hugh Freeze has made a big impact. Zach Etheridge never really stopped recruiting him, even though where it seemed like last year, he wanted to hear more from Auburn, and not he's the type of kid that gets recruited by head coaches. Hugh Freeze has picked up that mantle, ran with it, picked up the torch, and KJ is really interested in Auburn. I had a good conversation with him earlier this week about what he was planning to do for this week. So I think today he's in Bama. He'll go to Georgia, and then he'll end the weekend. I believe he's planning on staying the whole weekend at Auburn. So that's another huge development. I think it'll be a 2-day visit unofficially. And I'm about 85% sure. He hasn't confirmed yet, but just from his conversation, me talking to his mom, I'm pretty positive he's going to take an official to Auburn. As long as Auburn does an okay job at A-Day, they don't put him in a position where that he doesn't want to go. As long as they recruit well, I'm pretty sure he'll take a official visit.
Yeah, and I want to talk about that for a little bit because that's just the biggest thing when it comes to KJ Boldin. He visits earlier in the spring. I want to say like March 16th or somewhere around then. Has a 2-day kind of overnight visit there, and it was Auburn's chance to get in the picture. Going into that visit, honestly, Auburn was, Dukes, you can correct me if you have a different view. I think Auburn was almost completely outside. And then that visit really put Auburn kind of on the bubble. You only get 5 of those official visits, and it put Auburn kind of right there at that 5 or 6 spot. From my perspective, Dukes, it seems like Auburn's been recruiting him heavily enough now that obviously he's coming back for A-Day. And now it seems like Auburn's positioned itself well to maybe be in the 4 or the 5 spot to get one of those official visits. And then once you get an official visit, you're completely in the ballgame.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and one of the biggest things, he has a good relationship with Ken Lee. Ken's success in Auburn, and as early as it is for him to have as much success like Auburn as much as it is, Ken and some of the guys from Langston Hughes were back in Atlanta last week. KJ was watching everything they did. I think the relationships of the T Loves and the Ken Lees and the Damari Austin, who's another good friend of his, I think them having success at Auburn early on, and Ken and Damari, I think it's a huge for KJ. He knows he can come in. It's familiar. He knows it's a place where he can make his mark. There can be a legacy there for a player of KJ Boldin's caliber. And I think he's excited about it, and I think he's really giving Auburn a real consideration as far as where he would like to play his college football.
Yeah, Dick, you mentioned something. I'm sorry, Christian, but you mentioned Damari Austin, and there's no question right now that current players, current commitments have taken on a much more vocal role in helping Auburn recruit than they have the past few years. There's no question about that. That is, there's, that old saying is word of mouth is the best advertising. Well, there's no better advertising in recruiting than having current players talk about it. Perfect timing right there. And future teammates. Walker White has recruited as hard as just about anybody. And but you mentioned like Damari Austin, these guys, that's huge when you have a guy that you trust and that says, bro, hey, this is the place to be. It's going to be great. Love this new staff. That's how you get guys to visit. That's how you got to get guys on campus. And Christian, you shift to Walker White. There's nobody that's doing it any better than he is right now.
No, absolutely not. Every day you see a different tweet from him. One was to Casey Poe. He was literally tweeted out a video of his film, watching his film, saying, hey, come block for me, come help us out. Another one, actually, again, to Casey Poe. He tweeted, I think it was Casey Poe's mom's name, maybe, something like that. He said, I'll send you guys a bundle of roses.
Correct, yes.
Have the best commitment ceremony ever if you commit to Auburn. And it's been like that with everybody. We just got done talking about KJ Boldin. When he was here last on his way out, Walker White managed to track him down.
Yeah.
Walker White, they drove down and then they drove back up. But Walker found out KJ Boldin was leaving the hotel, and Walker went over to the hotel to go meet with KJ Boldin, talk with him a little bit. And the biggest thing I wrote in my 10 recruiting storylines for A-Day is Auburn's commits have really shown a real kind of maturity to the point where these visits are not about them. They've been to Auburn. They don't care. They're committed. They're locked in. They want to go there to work. And no one has really done that, at least more vocally than Walker White, but it's been the same for Jamarian Burnett. It's been the same for Jaden Lewis. It's been the same for Amon Lane. In the 2025 class, Malik Autry has been the same way. These guys have all been really, really mature. And Dukes, all 5 of these guys are going to be on campus on Saturday. This is a great opportunity for them. There's so many top targets there. We'll talk about some of them. Cam Coleman, Kevin Riley, Daniel Hill, Perry Thompson, Martavius Collins. We'll talk about all these guys in a little bit, but this is such a great opportunity for all 5 of these guys. You can go around as a group, spend a lot of time with one guy for a second. You can spread out, have everybody working on a different guy, whatever it may be. But Dukes, this is just it feels like a really good opportunity to have all 5 of these guys on campus at the same time working.
It's one of those situations where do you want to be part of the club? You see guys walking around; they have a different bit of a bit of a different swagger this year, a bit of a like in Atlanta or where really it comes from up north where they say guys walk with a bop, a diddy bop, so to speak. And it's like where you see guys, they have this little bit of swagger about themselves, like, hey, you want to be a part of the in crowd. We're changing something. This is the class that can get Auburn back to where it was. The Auburn that we grew up seeing, like the generation where these kids were like 2024, let's say in 2014, these kids were about 9-10 years old, probably just now finding out who they were as far as college football fans. Did they want to play football? And that's where you saw Auburn competing on the highest level in the national championship game. And I think those are the type of guys that you want around the program, guys who know they want to be in Auburn. Didn't hesitate, a lot of you can drag it out as long as you want to, and no disrespect to anybody that does, but there's something to be said for a program that is coming off of a 5-win season to be able to get 5 recruits committed this early, and the caliber of recruits that are committed at this time. It's insane to me, especially considering where we came from last year on A-Day.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it has been a eventful spring. The running joke that I've had, but being dead serious, is last spring my golf game got pretty good. This spring I have not had a lot of time to go out golfing, unfortunately, and fortunately, obviously, for other reasons. But let's stick with an in-state 5-star. We have a couple different options that we definitely want to talk about. Jason, I'm not even going to intro him too much because we've talked about him so many times. We've seen him play so many times. Cam Coleman will be back for the 3rd time in about 3 weeks or so. So this is, we just got done talking about Walker White. This would be a great chance for Walker to recruit maybe Auburn's number 1A, 1B. Perry Thompson, 1A, Cam Coleman, 1B. Those two are right there at the top.
Yeah, and very similar guys. You think about 6'3", 6'4", long, athletic, body control guys that can go up and make the tough catch. That's what they're looking for in this offense, and those two guys both fit the bill. And hey, make no mistake about it, this is not one or the other. They absolutely want both of those guys. I mean, this is not hey, that's our top. You're right, it's 1A, 1B. They want both these guys, and heck, there's some C's and D. They want to restock not only the wide receiver room. It's an interesting dynamic because make no bones about it. This is the first staff in quite a while at Auburn that has basically said, look, we like you. We believe you're good, but we want to recruit a better player than you are. That's the goal. That's the goal, to go out and say, you know what? We like you. You're good. But you know what we're going to do? We're going to recruit somebody to try to beat you out. That is how you do this. That's what it's all about. And for too long now at Auburn, it's been, oh, we're just going to sign this one guy. You're good. We're just going to sign one other player at your position. You can't do that because you're going to miss. You're going to miss on guys. That's NFL misses on guys. And I mean, heck, they miss on quarterbacks in the first round, and they're looking at 3 people, and they still miss on guys. You have to continue to load up at every position and may the best man win. That's it. You leave it up to them and say, look, it's about competition, but make no mistake about it. We're going to bring guys in, and that's what they're trying to do. And you look at the wide receiver room and you go, hey, they're trying to load up. And Cam Coleman, Perry Thompson, those are 2 guys that they're definitely making a strong run at.
Yeah, I think if somehow you manage to land both of those 2, which it'll be really difficult, I do think Auburn gets at least 1, personally, in my opinion. But they're 2, I mean, if you get both, you have 2 incredible receivers on the outside, similar but different a little bit in the sense that Cam Coleman I would consider a little more rangy, still needs to bulk up physically maybe a little bit more. But Perry Thompson is very built. His 6'3" is very built. He's like 6'3", 202, I think is what we have him listed at on the site. And Cam Coleman's 6'3", like 175, 180, somewhere in there. So a little bit of different players, but obviously 2 guys you would love to have on the outside. We'll stick with another in-state 5-star to talk about next. Demarcus Riddick, Chilton County linebacker, committed to Georgia. now making his third visit to Auburn this spring, if I remember correctly. Jason and I went to go and see him play basketball in January. And a couple weeks later, he came for junior day. He visited for a spring practice as well. And now Dukes, Demarcus Riddick will be back on Saturday for A-Day, which is a big one because, we just talked about wide receiver being a position of need. Linebacker is as well. And there's not too many better in the class than Demarcus Riddick.
Yeah, I see Demarcus Riddick as somebody who can come in and make immediate impact. He's committed to Georgia right now, and not to say that he would be shying away from competition because they're going to recruit. Auburn's going to recruit multiple guys who can play linebacker as well. But the path to playing time right now at linebacker, you can see him a lot. You can see him on the field a lot faster at Auburn right now than you would at Georgia. And also, I think the way that Ron Roberts is using his linebackers, a guy who can run and also has some pop to him, you can see him at that mic, or you can see him play the weak side, either one. But both of those inside backers in that defense, I think that he could fit interchangeably at either one of those spots. I could really see him and Bradley Shaw being the linebackers of the future at Auburn, and with this guy being the one making the calls.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a battle. I don't think you should expect news here anytime soon. Could be totally wrong on that. That's just a guess. But Alabama's working him hard. Obviously, Georgia's working to keep him in the class, and Josh Aldridge and Auburn are working as well. But this is undoubtedly one of Auburn's top linebacker targets, so it's really big to get him back on campus. I didn't even realize it. Didn't remember that he had recently gotten bumped up to 5-star status. But Jason, a guy that we've seen play basketball, here's a basketball picture of him playing. Jordan Ross, he'll be back for the second time this spring, visited for a spring practice earlier as well. Absolute just freak, athletic, jack linebacker, kind of pass rusher. Will need to add a little bit of weight once he gets to college, but extremely athletic player and probably one of Auburn's top overall defensive targets.
Yeah, you start talking about positions, and college recruiting is no different than NFL. There's certain positions right now that are valued more than others. Quarterback's always going to be one of those guys. Offensive tackle now is going to be one of those guys. And elite speed pass rusher is now one of those guys. Auburn doesn't have a guy like Jordan Ross on the roster. They don't. Not many people do either. I mean, this is a Derek Hall type guy, but probably maybe even a little bit more upside when you look at his body. I mean, you look at him right there, and you see his frame, and you go, that guy. I mean, he ain't even close to scratching the surface. He's about 215 now, and he already is built physically. I mean, he's going to be 235, 240 probably as a true freshman, and a guy that can absolutely get off the edge, can bend, can turn and run. And I think about, watching Terry Price coach the position, 25 years ago, and thinking about, for them it was they were running the hoops. They would turn and run and circle. Rodney Garner doing those things, and now you look at it. What is Auburn looking for? They're looking for that type of guy. They're looking for that guy that can turn and run and bend and turn the corner and get to the quarterback, and that's what Jordan Ross can do. And I think, you look at talking about the targets, he's got to be up there on the board. You're right, and because of the position, especially, it might push him close to the overall top because of need area on this roster heading into 2024 when you start talking about the need to get after the quarterback.
Yeah, he's one. I don't think he's particularly in a hurry to make a commitment. Not by any means. I think there's a long way to go there. But
he's also a guy that I absolutely could see going, hey, when he knows it's the right spot, he could be done and be over with, because he's not a guy that loves the recruiting process. At least it doesn't feel that way. He's a guy that knows it's part of it, but he is not one of these guys that's going to tweet about it, do a bunch of things. He shows up and goes about his business and goes on. So he could be a guy. I've seen it happen over the years. We all have. There's certain guys that go, I found my home. I'm done. Yeah. I think Jordan Ross could be that type of guy.
I think that's a good read, honestly. And I hadn't really thought about it. Nowadays, I say nowadays, I've barely been covering recruiting. But Jason, back when you were covering recruiting, even a couple of years ago, you guys would have recruits that would walk out and just say, hey, I just committed. I think Auburn's where I want to be. Now it's a lot of, come visit for junior day, whatever, get an edit made, get everything ready, and then commit maybe a few days later. Jordan Ross is definitely that type of person who might not – he could just have a notes app, just screenshot, put up on Twitter, committed wherever. Auburn, Tennessee is another big school, Georgia, Alabama, all those schools are in on him. But that's definitely kind of what he's like. I don't think that'll happen in the near future, but you're right. He's liked Auburn a lot, and you can't rule out the possibility of him just randomly popping a commitment one day. Dukes, let's touch on Jalen Crawford. This is a guy that you know a lot about. He's visited Auburn a handful of times this year already. I went ahead and put in a crystal ball pick for him actually a couple of weeks ago. I just like where Auburn sits in his recruitment, and I like it even more that he's going to be back on Saturday.
Yeah, I think it's one that he wasn't going to miss. He and his pops love Auburn. How close it is, the proximity is really, really good for his family. LSU has been a presumed leader for a long time, but Auburn has definitely made some headway. I think him and the rest of the guys from Parkview are at North Carolina today, I think. But from talking to the guys, it seems like they're really excited about Auburn. How close Auburn is to Atlanta is huge. And the relationship between Jalen and his pops, Jay, I can't see Jalen going further than 2 to 3 hours just because of how tight they are. Usually when you see single parent homes, it'll be mom and son, but it's really rare for you. Not really rare, but it is rare to see dad and son in a single parent household. And that's the situation there. And I don't think those guys want to be that far away from each other. And so I think that right now, if I had to put in a crystal ball, somebody said, Dukes, you got to put one in today, I think I would definitely go with Auburn.
Yeah. Let's touch on one more guy here, another Georgia guy. I want to get both of your guys' opinion on him. Martavius Collins, the former Alabama tight end commit, listed as an athlete. Some schools, I think, like him as almost a defensive end, pretty big player, and Auburn's recruiting him more so as an H-back. But he has some receiving skills. You could talk about him lining up as kind of a fullback and going out, catching a pass a little bit. You could definitely line him up next to an offensive tackle, something like that. And Auburn and Ben Agamawa, it looks like they want to take 2 tight ends this class. When we talked with him, he said, roundtable style, he said he was hoping numbers-wise they'd be able to get 2 tight ends. It looks to be the case. And Martavius Collins is a guy who could be a potential next commitment. Definitely keeping an eye on him this weekend. He did just visit Florida State and said he doesn't really want to commit until closer to his senior season. So I don't know if he's necessarily in a rush to get things done. But I think, assuming it seems like Auburn does really want him, and they could make a push big enough this weekend, Jason, maybe to try and get him on board.
Yeah, you mentioned kind of his body style, his play style. Not every tight end can be a wide receiver playing tight end. You still got to have guys that are physical, can set the edge, do those things in the run game, and catch the ball. He reminds me more of a John Samuel Schenker kind of guy. And this, Luke Deal is kind of that guy for this year's team, but he's kind of their true edge tight end and does some of that physical thing, but they're going to throw the ball and do some of those things to him too. When you think about Martavius Collins, you think about, okay, Luke Deal, more than likely going after this year. Tyler Franz is a senior. Brandon Frazier's a senior. Who knows what Rivaldo Fairweather's going to do if he has a monster year. So you're right. You're probably at a minimum going to have to replace 2 tight ends after this season. So you start looking at, what do you need? Well, you need a physical guy that can do those things. And you look at him, and that's a kid that's just, still in his junior year of high school. You think about him being, 250, 255 probably when he gets to college, and that's the kind of guy you're looking for. So really interesting prospect. And, you're right with especially when you're taking 2 tight ends, that would be a guy that would be a good fit.
Dukes, I want to get your opinion on him real quick. Rome guy. So kind of from your area there in the Atlanta area, just kind of what do you think about him and how Auburn fits into his recruitment right now?
Yeah, I think Auburn sits in a really good position for him. He's one, and to me, he's one of the guys that Rome had a lot of talent. Like there was a lot made about Langston last year and Gainesville, but Rome actually had a lot of talent on their team. So he's used to playing at a high level of football. He's got a lot of guys that play that are in playing Division I who came out of Rome. And so I think sometimes having that level of competition, just knowing how to play. And he's one of the guys that I see as everybody talks about the touchdowns and the 40 times and all of that. But he's one of the guys that helps you in the weight room. He's one of the guys that you get out of the bus, that gets off the bus and you say, okay, that's a football player. That kind of raises the floor at Auburn. When you've got guys like this, like that are coming in and they may not be the 20 touchdown guy, but they're the guys who know how to play football, to do things the right way, that are physical, that help you with some of the physicality that can be missing in a finesse game of a lot of tight ends these days. Special teams guy. And I'm not taking anything away from him. Like he could be a 20 touchdown guy. But what I am saying is having a specimen like this at tight end that can move, he could absolutely be a guy who could switch positions one day because of how he's built and his athleticism. So the more athletes you get, the better. And I think it's just another testament to how Auburn is recruiting.
Any final thoughts, guys? In terms of going into A-Day, should be recording this again on Wednesday night. Should be listening to this on Friday. I mean, final thoughts about Auburn recruiting going into A-Day, or just A-Day in general.
Yeah, I think it's just weather. How much will weather impact if it's a rainy day and if the game, how they have to change or maybe improvise, does that impact some guys? It potentially could, but I think it's going to be a good day no matter what. Still lots of things to do, visiting campus, doing all those things. So hopefully weather holds off and we get to have a fun day on Saturday, even if it was, maybe a little cool and wet. But if we can get a somewhat of a game in and get some guys on campus, it'll be all good.
Hey, rain, shine, doesn't matter. We'll be there. We'll be covering it. We'll have all the different recruiting stories, obviously stories about the spring game and what happens in that. But for me personally, a little biased because I'm a recruiting guy, but I think the recruiting for A-Days might be the biggest storyline just because of how loaded the visitor list is. And I mean, we touched on a fraction of the list today. And these are names that we've confirmed. The list will likely continue to grow. Auburn has guys in for Friday's practice as well. And some of them are planning to stay over and watch A-Day as well. And some of them are just there for Friday. So we're wrapping up what has been a very busy recruiting spring. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed everything that we've had. Obviously it does not end here. Transfer portal opens up on April 15th. Visits can still happen as well. These high schools will have spring practices starting up soon. So we'll be out on the road talking to those guys. Coaches are allowed back out on the road soon as well for the evaluation period. So it maybe slows down in some aspect a little bit, but it's still going to be really busy over the next couple of months over at auburnundercover.com. If you're not over there, definitely make sure to check us out. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to subscribe. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything. And it helps us a lot. We're on the push for 7,000 subscribers now, which is awesome. And if you're listening on Apple, Spotify, Google, whatever you listen on podcasts, definitely make sure to leave us a review if you enjoyed it. And we'll catch you guys on the next one.